Welcome to Pod Like a Champion, the blueandgold.com recruiting podcast. It's Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. I'm Patrick Engel, joined as always by our blueandgold.com recruiting insider, Mike Singer. And Mike last week was out at a very underrated, at least just going by the names of the two schools, rivalry. Get this. Davy Crockett High School against Daniel Boone High School. I mean, just I would love to picture the traditions you can do in a rivalry game between high schools named for two outdoorsmen, I guess, is what we can put it. Tell us about your visit here, Mike. And really, I want to know, what was this rivalry game like? And really, I'm just curious if Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett actually even had a rivalry when they were alive 200 years ago.
Well, what's funny is in August I was in Texas for a family trip, and me and my wife flew out of San Antonio. So we went to the Alamo, and of course there was a David Crockett statue. So I took a picture of it and sent it over to the coaches there at the high school, and they got a kick out of that. Probably the coolest thing about the rivalry. Well, first of all, there was like 2,000 people there, which is basically the entire city of Jonesboro. But I guess it's
convenient when your entire town fits within regulations that might be in place.
I think that was a stretch. I think it's close. It's like 8,000. But typically, I was told that 10,000 people are there, but they only had 2,000 tickets because of COVID. So typically, every single person is there, and there's literally just standing room if you can find standing room. Like that's what it usually is. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see that, but still, the atmosphere was crazy. I mean, the Daniel Boone student section had, of course, Prince Kollie's the guy there to see on the Crockett side, but the Boone student section had a sign for Princess Kollie, and Notre Dame is a basketball school, which is like not even that like creative, but still, I just got a kick out of that. They were heckling. It felt like what you would see at a basketball game with student section when they heckled, but they were doing that at a football game. So that was cool. The trophy for the game, they actually have a trophy, which is cool, right?
Oh, this is awesome.
A retired musket.
Oh, I love it.
Kind of thing. It's certainly you can't fire it, but I would imagine someone in Northeast Tennessee could figure out how to make that thing fire. But
or has at least tried to make it fire.
Right. So Crockett won, which we'll get into the game, but the rivalry is now 36-14 in favor of Boone. So they've dominated that rivalry. Of course, David Crockett's head coach and most of the staff went to Daniel Boone. So that even bolsters the rivalry a little bit more. And if you win 3 consecutive games in the rivalry, then your school gets to retire that musket and hang it up somewhere, and who knows, probably someone's going to want to go steal it and try to fire it. But so yeah, that was, I believe Crockett's won 3 of the last 4. And Kollie's been playing varsity for the past 3 years, so he's won 2 of 3. So a good way for Prince Kollie to go out in the rivalry, because he was a beast.
For a minute, I thought you were going to say, if you win 3 in a row, you get to fire the musket. But I feel like there's a endless liability concerns,
right?
That makes that not a great idea.
Yeah, and I feel like only in Tennessee that you could even have a freaking gun.
So let's just because this is so fascinating, what kind of rivalry do you think Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone would have had 200 years ago? I don't know. I mean, was it even a rivalry? Or, I mean, I doubt it. I mean, they were 2 American outdoorsmen. What reason would they have had to not like each other?
But it's a rivalry now, and it's awesome.
I mean, I wonder what they would think if now there's 2 high schools that are rivals here in some sport that wasn't even around when they were invented. But anyway, let's get back on the on-ramp here for what you actually went to this game for. But first, want to make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And best way to support this podcast is to subscribe to blueandgold.com. You can follow us on Twitter. Follow me at Patrick Engel _. That's ENGEL. And of course, you can follow Mike at Rivals_Singer. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional content. So, Mike, of course, you went there to see Notre Dame commit Prince Kollie. Believe this was the second time you've gone to see him at a game or some kind of practice since the season or preseason got going, whatever. What did you think from your second in-person viewing? And now, of course, Notre Dame's recruiting to play linebacker. He does that. But he plays quarterback, right?
Yeah, more of a wildcat. He's completed 10 of 14 passes for 85 yards. So he was playing more actual, like, every down quarterback early in the season when their QB was injured. But with him back, toting the rock at running back, it looks really good. On Friday night, he had 18 carries, 124 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And man, it's hard not to watch him and be like, what if running back, for Prince Kollie? I mean, Notre Dame is absolutely recruiting him as a running back. Clark Lee and Nick Lazinski did a really nice job persuading Kollie away from the Georgias and Oklahoma and LSUs of the world and to Notre Dame's fold. But, he is just so much fun to watch. And you see the rawness in that he is so far from being a finished product. And that's an absolute good thing. And I was talking about this with the coaches. This is not someone who has bad habits or has been to a lot of different, arrivals or an Under Armour camp or really any camps or anything like that where he could be taught something that Notre Dame doesn't want. Like, he is just coming in as a 6'2", 205-pound, absolutely chiseled athletic freak. That's what Notre Dame is getting. And just an incredible young man as well. So coaches there at David Crockett could not be more high on Kollie, and I don't know how much higher I can be on him either. I mean, it's super cliche to say this, but he's a better kid than he is a football player, and he's a darn good football player. But spending some time with him, talking to him, hearing what people have to say about him, just kind of seeing what he means to that place. I spent probably an hour after the game on the field with everyone, and partly because there was a 20-minute fireworks show. Seriously, Patrick, it was 4th of July in late October there in Jonesboro, Tennessee. And probably 200 people came up to him and asked for a picture. Like that, he is a superstar in this town that's had some other big-time football players. The only one that's come to mind right now that I've been told about is Jason Witten. I bet I've been told some others, but he is just
mediocre to have in your hometown, right?
Yeah, big-time Monday Night Football announcer. Ooh, yeah, he wasn't too good at that, was he?
About the only thing you can hold against him at this point. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, so as far as like the breakdown of his performance, running back, it was just give him the ball and let him go. Dan and Boone did everything they could to stop him, stuff the box, and make them throw the ball. That was absolutely the game plan. That's the only game plan. And they had some success early, but then, coaching staff made some adjustments, and Kollie just ran wild. And then defensively, see ball, get ball. When he's at Rover, he's going to be so good. Like, I had to remind myself, like, he's playing inside linebacker right now, but at Notre Dame, Prince Kollie is going to be playing Rover, at least to start his career. I could see him sliding inside, 2 or 3 years in. But, man, him at Rover out in space, a kid who legitimately, if he said, I want to play safety, okay, yeah, play safety. Like, the Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah comparisons, they're real. Like, I understand where people are coming from with that.
I mean, I've made my thoughts on him now. I think in the last time we did the last podcast, or one recent one, where whenever we discussed underrated players, I picked him for a lot of the reasons you just described, with the raw traits and being malleable in a good way and not having to correct habits that were formed that you didn't like to see. I mean, I think that all factors in of why I think he's a 4-star level type of kid, and maybe will be when it's all said and done. And I understand why the ranking is where it is at this point, and just when you look at rawness. But I mean, I'm curious what you saw that maybe you didn't as much in the first viewing, or that something you saw that furthered a belief you had about something about him that was underappreciated or anything like that. And I asked this out of, I mean, we've kind of seen the complete evolution, I guess, of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah into, or even last year in his breakout season. Still didn't play some third downs. Now it's, you don't take him off the field. And just the last week against Pitt, he goes and covers a slot receiver one-on-one, flips his hips, runs the route right with the guy, and intercepts the pass. I mean, is all of that, I mean, I'm just going to defer to you here because you've seen him play twice, a trajectory in a sense you can see him on? And to get back to my original question, what have you noticed in more viewings of him that wasn't there initially before, or harder to notice?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about Owusu-Koramoah, that's a first round pick. So for at least that's what the pundits are saying right now. So to say, Kollie is, comparable to Owusu-Koramoah, that's quite the praise, and it's one that just makes sense in terms of the first viewing versus the second viewing. So I went up to Jonesboro, Tennessee, about 4 or 5 days after he announced his commitment. It was funny. I remember before the Crockett coaches were like, "Hey, you probably don't want to come now. I mean, he's committed. You probably wanted to come here when he wasn't committed to get the scoop." And I was like, "No, I want to come up even more now because now he's committed to Notre Dame. I want to really tell this story now." So, it was for a practice. I think it was like their third or fourth practice of fall camp. So, totally different setting, right? So that viewing was getting to see, all right, is he really like this chiseled? Like you see just the pictures of him, and now we have all of our own pictures at blueandgold.com that I've been able to take of Kollie that you can see. And yes, he is jacked. I mean, you see the pictures of where he's crossing his arms, and he's got biceps that are bigger than my forehead. So for just head in general, his biceps are just monstrous. So that was kind of the big thing. Want to see him run around. But this one was all about the production in this big rivalry game where the competition, like, it's not the best. It's not, Atlanta or Miami or Southern California, of course, but pretty good ball. There's D1 players, in Northeast Tennessee, and good, solid football players. And obviously it's a huge rivalry game. So Kollie dominated both sides of the ball. So that's what I wanted to see. And so really, to recap, the first viewing was, are you this big? Are you this athletic? And then the second one was, okay, you have those traits, but are you productive? And he was certainly productive. Also, Patrick, just using the word traits now feels weird because I feel like it's like a buzzword in Notre Dame circles right now. So like we're using it as a positive, but I feel like so many times fans are like it's a negative thing and it's a joke now.
I wonder why, and where that comes from. Let me think about that for a minute. No. Well, anyway, that's the newsy part as far as what's going on in Notre Dame recruiting. Obviously been a pretty quiet time period now, as the season tends to be in a lot of times. We're going to take a quick time out, get back to some other things that might be on tap, and an interesting, very brief recruitment for Notre Dame in the 2021 class. Mike, you put it very perfectly on the message board in describing the recruitment of Louisiana safety Matthew Langlois. I don't know if I said that correctly at all. So
I like that. Yeah, sounds right.
I'm not going to give myself the benefit of the doubt there. But anyway, a safety from Louisiana that Notre Dame offered, I believe it was Sunday. And then Monday, it flips from Kansas State, where he committed in August, to home state LSU, which had offered him earlier in the year or in the last couple of weeks or somewhere in October, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike.
Yeah.
But you put it best as, let's describe Notre Dame's involvement in this kid's recruitment. And it's the gif of Grandpa Simpson walking in the door, hanging up his hat, grabbing it, and turning right back around. So I assume it not only is just the perfect use of a timeless gif, that is kind of how it's going to be with Notre Dame. And as far as that new offer is not really much of a thing at this point anymore.
It's hysterical, man. Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame offers about, or at least when he posted on social media on Sunday night, 8 or 9 Eastern, and right on the dot, 12 p.m. Eastern time, 11 a.m. in Louisiana, he tweets that he's flipped to LSU. And I was talking to some people, and the feeling was that it was just a matter of time before he would commit to LSU. But this young man has had a big senior season, and this is something we talk about, right? Like, Notre Dame has a few spots. They want to evaluate senior film and then, maybe decide offers. I feel like we just kind of say that, but then we're like, that's just kind of coach talk, right? Or media speak. Well, it's real. They offered Darren Johnson last month from Indianapolis, a Northwestern commit, and then they offer Matthew Langlois, right? Is that what kind of going with
that sounds?
I like it. And they offered him. This is 2 times they've offered these kids that are committed to Wildcats with purple school colors, and I don't think they're going to get either. They just need to not offer kids committed to Purple Panthers. Because I don't think Darren Johnson seems pretty happy with this Northwestern commitment. So if that's the case, kudos to him for picking your school and sticking with it. And then in Matthew Langlois' case, grew up a LSU fan, 40 minutes from LSU's campus, wears number 7 because of Tyrann Mathieu. Like, it just, makes sense. So Notre Dame offers, which them offering, this was their first new 2021 offer since Darren Johnson in mid-September. So, you have a 5-week span there. So it just really shows, okay, Notre Dame is certainly looking for, more DBs. That is probably the biggest key for the Fighting Irish to finish out the 2021 class.
So you have to imagine, given that those 2 offers probably aren't the last ones we're going to see in the 2021 class as far as trying to find another DB. I mean, I don't know if there's any names out there you want to throw out to watch or not, if it's too elementary, but am I kind of on base in just kind of assuming that, we're probably going to see more, or at least a couple kids we haven't heard of, or who have, they've been mentioned to you by whoever is just a name, where it all of a sudden becomes like, okay, a target or a possibility or something.
Yeah, so we're recording these Pod Like a Champion episodes every other week, Patrick. So I want to say our last episode, you said, I doubt we have seen Notre Dame offer its last 2021 recruit.
Yeah.
Clearly you were correct.
Yeah.
And I would say that is the case as well. Look, numbers are tricky to get into. Like, how many spots does Notre Dame have left in the 2021 class? It's always tricky in a normal recruiting year because things are so fluid. Well, try 2020, guys. Like, try this year. Like, it's even more tricky. So my guess is, Notre Dame has 19 commitments and expecting all of them to sign.
Okay, there's some news.
Newsy item. Yeah, it's, we've addressed it at blueandgold.com and
right.
Lucky Charms recently. But my guess is 21, maybe 22. But I think 21 for me is the magic number. So I think you're looking at let's just say 22 for now. I think you're looking at 2 DBs. Yeah, I think you're looking at 1 or 2 DBs, maybe a linebacker, and then, and so now I'm throwing out a 4th spot, so this will be 23. But So a combination of something of this. Let's just take 3 of these 4.
Right.
2 DBs, linebacker, and then kind of a best available type thing, whether that's another running back, which is still a possibility after Jameer Smith transfers. If Dante Thornton wants to flip to Oregon to Notre Dame, or just something along those lines. If Notre Dame does want to take a kicker, so that they don't have Jonathan Doer graduate, because right now he's saying that he wants to come back for his sixth season. So let's say Notre Dame doesn't want to go from him graduating to a true freshman as their, something like that. If someone like Harrison Leonard, isn't ready, one of those walk-ons. So something like that. As far as unoffered guys, there's plenty. Go to blueandgold.com, check out my recruiting articles and mention those guys. It is premature, but I also want to inform our subscribers, hey, here's who Notre Dame's talking to. That doesn't mean they're going to offer. It's just they're doing their research and all that good stuff on. So in terms of new offers to potentially go out, you're looking at defensive back, like we've seen with Aaron Johnson and Matthew Langlois. If Notre Dame decides we want to take a second running back in this class, obviously running back would be a position to watch. And right now your lone linebacker target is Kahanu Kia, who is actually going to be on campus for the Clemson game weekend, which he's told me and I've reported regarding that at blueandgold.com. If he's able to get a ticket, good for him. I don't know if that's going to be possible.
Seems pretty hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
But either way, just to have him there and look, he's paying his own way to come from Hawaii to that game. I mean, I think that says a lot about his interest in Notre Dame. And then look, I don't know where that compares to some of those other finalists on the West Coast, like Stanford and Utah, I believe, are the ones you reported, Mike. But those are at least easier to get to than Notre Dame. And if you're gonna do the trip on your own dime to come for this big game, at least that seems to say that I'm going to seriously consider Notre Dame until I make my decision. So that's where you want to be, I think, in a situation like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's going to Utah for like a padded camp for kids who are not playing this fall. So he's going to check out the Utes campus, then Notre Dame, and then before he flies out of LA, he's going to stop by UCLA. So he is seeing those 3 other schools. Stanford, you mentioned he's been to previously, I think a year or 2 ago. So he's not going to stop by there. But I don't think a second linebacker is a huge need. But if Notre Dame wants to have more consistent years of, okay, you didn't take a linebacker in 2020, you take one in 2021. Well, then in 2022, are you taking like 4? So I think it would be good to take one in this class or a second if you want to keep it, more evenly spread throughout the years rather than 0 to 1 to 4 and 3. So that makes sense. It's not a huge need, but I could certainly understand Notre Dame seeing Kahanu Kia and saying, yeah, we want this guy. I don't think they're just going to offer some linebacker just to take him. So that's kind of the rundown for 2021. It's certainly active. I mean, they're after these guys, and of course we haven't mentioned Sierra Wright from Los Angeles, Loyola, number 95 player in the country and number 6 corner. Notre Dame still involved there, but so is USC, Oregon, Nebraska, Michigan, and Penn State has picked it up recently. So he's still kind of going the distance with his recruitment, it seems. So if Notre Dame, let's just say dream scenario, finishing out the 2021 class, Notre Dame lands Sierra Wright, and Titus Makayo Atamalala, who we haven't mentioned yet, 4-star from also Hawaii. And then I think Kahanu Kia at linebacker. And so Titus is your athlete who Notre Dame kind of prefers at safety, but he's a really nice wide receiver as well. But listen, wide receivers are kind of a dime a dozen. You just don't find safeties like Titus. So I think that's your kind of your perfect scenarios. You get Titus, you get Sear right, and then Kanuki as your linebacker, and then Notre Dame probably done on the offensive side of the ball unless they do find a running back and they can make the numbers work.
Yeah, I would definitely call that a dream. But anyway, my thought, or at least how I've just been picturing this, and to use the 3-ish spots left that you just outlined, is one more DB of all of the names they've recently offered, or whoever else is on the next list that comes from somewhere in there, assuming they're just going to keep offering guys until one of them commits because they have a long enough list of guys they like. I'll just operate under that assumption for a minute. Then one spot kind of for DB, whatever. I mean, I think Titus can be a best available type just because, all right, you have positional flexibility, even if you like him at safety and you're trying to think of him as a guy to round out your DB class. Linebacker, I would think it's Kia. If you want him, I doubt it'll be a thing where they just offer a bunch of random linebackers in January or something if they don't get Kia or anything. So that's his spot, or it's nobody's spot. The only difference really would be the linebacker recruiting, I guess, trend looks like one of those sine or cosine graphs as opposed to something that's a little more evened out. Yeah, I can't believe I just went back to calculus references. I haven't taken that class in years, but that was when I realized I hit my ceiling as a math person. And then, yeah, best available thing where if someone falls into your lap who you offer who wants to flip, that's that. Not anyone you're going to pursue as like a new name, where if it's, somebody flips to you who you wanted before, or something happens with somebody else where it's a signing day squeeze or confusion or just one of those bad looks you see somewhere every year, that they just end up making room for him because he's a good player. That's at least kind of my understanding on it, and really just going off of what you said and things you've written. And I think that would be a pretty good end to it, but also being mindful of number crunch might be coming on the roster with, Brian Kelly had kind of hinted at it, that you have to get back down to 85 for 2022. Obviously, anyone you sign in 2021 is going to be on your 2022 roster. And that getting back down to 85 is going to include, you might have to have some guys who are back or who have a fifth year, but not bring them back just because of the numbers, because you don't have any countable players coming off your roster. So I think that's something to watch, obviously not for a couple of years, but one way to at least offset some of those things later on is, being mindful of what you do to finish off this class. But it seems to me that they already are, just based on what we just talked about of what there's 2, 3, 4 in an absolute emergency / crazy situation spot left. So I guess one that would certainly fall into the crazy situation would be Donovan Edwards, running back from West Bloomfield, Michigan. I know we haven't really mentioned him much lately for good reason, but for what it's worth, he put Notre Dame in his top 7 schools released on Friday the 23rd. Those are Penn State, LSU, Alabama, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Georgia. That's 6, right? Oklahoma too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really think this changes much. Again, just going off of what you've said, Mike, but at least it's just something that I figured I'd bring up and say, all right, what do you read into this, if anything?
Yeah. So Donovan Edwards making a top 7 might be, oh, Notre Dame's in it. Like, hey, we're in it. But if I would have reported, hey guys, Notre Dame's running 5th for Donovan Edwards, you wouldn't be excited.
Right.
So I do think Michigan's in the lead. Oklahoma seems very involved and may win the recruitment of 5-star running back Kamar Wheaton, who Notre Dame actually hosted on campus summer of 2019. But as time went on, just kind of faded out in that recruitment. Of course, not by their own choice. If they were up to Notre Dame, they would have Kamar Wheaton in the class. But he was pretty much destined to stay in the Big 12 or maybe in the SEC. But again, it does seem like Oklahoma's going to get him. So that might knock, them out of it with Edwards. Maybe not. I don't know. But that's kind of the vibe, is that Michigan leads Oklahoma, Georgia in the second group. I'll be honest, I haven't super closely followed this recruitment, because all I've heard for months is that Notre Dame's running fourth or fifth, or certainly in that third tier. If Michigan's in the first tier, then you got a group in the second tier. Notre Dame's probably third. So right now, I'm not liking Notre Dame's chances for the reasons I just laid out, but also the longer this thing drags out, you would just think the better it is for Notre Dame. If he commits tomorrow, it's not looking good for Notre Dame. But if it's, January rolls around, let's say he skips the early signing period, which would be crazy now that I mentioned that, because I believe he's enrolling early. But let's say
early, but yes.
Let's say December rolls around then and still hasn't found his home. And some of these other schools fill up, and then it's just Michigan or Notre Dame, for example. And I've heard some people say, if it was going to be Michigan for Donovan Edwards, why isn't he committed by now? So maybe there's something that's held him back from Michigan. I don't know what's inside Donovan's head right now. I don't think many people know what's inside, what he's thinking right now. But it's a good thing Notre Dame's on the list, and we'll just have to see. Like I said, the longer this thing goes, I think we're just 50 days from National Signing Day, which is crazy to think about, that it's that close. And here Notre Dame still might be offering some new guys, but it's just a crazy recruiting cycle with no visits. I mean, not a single 2021 recruit has taken an official visit.
And probably most of them won't, because if they sign in December and that's before the dead period lets up. Yeah, there's a weird deal. And yeah, like you said, 50 days until National Signing Day. That means it's 50 and change until we're done with 2020. Hallelujah. So thank God it's 50. But yeah, I look at the Edwards top 7 and just think it's nice you threw them a bone, or that he'll be responsive to whatever contact they're still giving him or are in contact with him. But yeah, the only thing that seems to be in play there is one of those best available wonky things that happens on signing day, where he decides for whatever reason, I don't want to go to Michigan, a couple others have filled up and whatever, and it's just kind of outlasts. But yeah, I mean, you never know what happens in recruiting, but that seems unlikely. I mean, it's one of those signing day surprise, called a surprise for a reason. So
yeah,
and I don't want to say, and I guess to everyone, and I mean, you see these top 7s and whatnot with recruits every year, and I don't want to call this a rant, but I think they get put more stock into them than they should for all fans of all 7 teams, just to use the number that we're talking about here. And you would say that for a top 6 or a 5 or 8 or whatever. But I don't think it matters unless there's something crazy that happens at the end of the recruitment. Because really, who cares if you finish in 4th or 7th for a kid? You didn't get him, and if you finish 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever, you probably weren't that close. So I'm just going to use this example of a thing where I think just to put the point of don't overreact, because ultimately, what does it matter? There was I believe it was Harrison Ingram, 5-star basketball recruit, put out a top 6, didn't have Texas A&M in it, I think. And it was something where he had a top 10 with him, had a top 6 without him, but the top 6 had some school that wasn't in the top 10. And a bunch of A&M fans are like, all right, what's going on here? And it's like, all right, who really cares? You were going to finish in 4th. Does that make you feel better? No, of course not. And I guess it doesn't ultimately, it's a little bit apples and oranges, at least for this specific situation, because Donovan put Notre Dame in the top 7. But I guess just to say, like, if for whatever reason that didn't happen, or if there was another recruit who doesn't put them in there, that's some mild surprise or whatever, and it's just like, I don't know. People see these like top lists. It's not like it's even a top 3 where you think it's real serious, but like a top 5, 6, whatever, and it's like, okay, someone in the top 5 still has to finish 5th, and that's not really anything to celebrate, right?
I've got a few thoughts here, Patrick. If you're done,
Okay.
if you're done on your mini rant,
that's just what I wanted to say. I know it doesn't really apply for Notre Dame in this specific spot, but every fan base and every team or whatever, or fans that follow recruiting, you know what I'm saying here, comes across that kind of situation, and I just don't really think it matters for a kid that you're probably not going to end up getting.
Well, we're wrapping up Pod Like a Champion here, so this is the time for rants. I would never.
Pod Like a Champion is brought to you by rants. Give the people what they want.
I would never watch a show like The Bachelor. Never have, never will.
Oh, I'm right with you, and I have no interest. But continue.
Not saying maybe I have. I don't know. I'm married, okay?
You can't help but walk in when the TV. Yes.
So not that I've watched the show, but I would assume finishing second in The Bachelor or Bachelorette or whatever it is, that's gotta be the worst.
Yeah.
Like you would rather finish third or be the first person voted out or not voted out. This isn't Survivor, but not get the rose, whatever it is. Go out on night 1. Because man, being second sucks. You work so hard. I mean, there's Notre Dame fans. You could think of recruitments that you followed that kid so closely. Every Notre Dame outlet put out so many stories about this kid, and then Notre Dame finishes second. Patrick, don't name any names. Everyone knows who we're thinking about here.
I'm trying to hold it in.
But yeah, that sucks. You'd almost like not get your hopes up. That cracks me up. The other thing I want to say in defense of some of these kids putting out.
Oh yeah, and I don't mean this to say like don't put out top lists or whatever. I'm more trying to speak of the fan reaction to them. But
yeah, well, I'm speaking to the fans because so many times it's like, all right, some of them are ridiculous. If you have a top 8 and you put out a top 7, or excuse me, if you have 8 offers and you put out a top 7,
yeah, like, what ridiculous. Are we doing? What are we doing here?
Or if you got like 6 offers and you put out a top 12, like, all right, that I'm not even reporting on that. That's not a real thing. But for some of these kids, this is a public declaration of here's who I'm considering. I have 45 offers. I'm cutting my list down to 15. Fans are like, oh man, I've seen this story. Like, I don't want this drama. The kid doesn't want the drama. That's why he's cutting his list down. It's a quality of freaking life decision. So I used to kind of scoff at, kid announcing a top 12 during his junior year, but now I'm like, I understand, because some of these schools will have every school coach on the staff send out an automated text message. So now you're getting, 10 texts from one school, and then just think about you have 30 other offers. So I do want to say that fans, we've been through so many recruitments. Well, these recruits, this is the only one they've been through. This is what they know. Whereas I've covered thousands of recruitments. So I always like to give the benefit of the doubts to the kids who are going through it. But
oh yeah,
I wasn't saying that in response to you. It's just kind of another top group discussion.
Yeah, exactly. And right. I mean, if you're a kid who has 30 plus offers by or around September 1st, your junior year, when everybody can talk to you, and all the texts start flooding in, and you want to trim it down by half, even. Yeah, it's 15. It doesn't sound like much, but yeah, it would reduce your stream of things blowing up your phone by a little bit, and that or just clear your head. That helps for something, I'm sure, for the players. So,
dude, some schools don't give up though. I mean, how about, I don't know if you saw this, Patrick, Christian. Zachary, the kid who calls himself the Seven on Twitter. Have you seen anything about that?
I think I read about this somewhere. I decided I'm just not gonna dive full in, but yeah, I read something about just this wonky.
He had a 4-minute commitment video, like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings style commitment video where he didn't commit to any school.
Oh, come on.
And he had like a top 6 of Colorado, Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, something like that. And then out of the blue, he commits to Liberty.
No.
Yes.
Out of all those top 6, oh man.
And then
part of me almost appreciates that for just being a massive troll job. I don't know if that's what it was or not, but if that was indeed the case, I can kind of appreciate that. You gotta drum up hype for Liberty football recruiting, right?
Yeah, Hugh Freeze.
Bad press of that university for probably good reason, but yeah.
Liberty. My sister-in-law just graduated from Liberty. My sister-in-law. I've been to Lynchburg and campus, and it's actually a pretty cool little place, So I'm hoping
I'd enjoy
their rise.
Lynchburg, yeah,
it's a pretty cool place.
All right, I think when we start talking about Liberty and commit videos that may or may not be troll jobs, it's time to wrap up. But we thank you guys for listening again. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter at Patrick Engel _ at Rivals _Singer. Leave us a rating, leave us a review. If you like what you hear, leave us 5 stars, nice comments, tell your friends. We'll love you forever. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Until then, take care.